So welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome to the potentially the first ever LGBTQ indie author roundtable. I don't know if it's the first ever, but nobody's ever heard of it, so we're gonna go with that. How is everyone?
Doing great, thanks.
Pretty well.
Good.
Doing okay, thanks.
Doing good? Perfect. So today we're going to talk books. We're going to be reading passages from our books, and we're going to be discussing each one. But first, I would like to do a little moment of silence for 9/11 victims. So what inspired the whole project?
Well, it was right when Trump was about to be elected, and there was a lot of build the wall propaganda around here. And I have a lot of Hispanic students, and obviously I'm queer and my roommate is queer, and there was just a lot of fear going on. And I was very interested in this idea of xenophobia and the border and like the wall between us. You know, I thought about that a lot. And so plus the way that I was worried the environment would go under Trump's leadership. And so that kind of came from that. I was imagining I wanted to explore the idea of the border in a different world so I could kind of process what I was seeing. Yeah.
Amazing. And when I was reading your book, I was all the environmental things, like the things about the future, I was like, they made me shudder because it potentially could happen.
Yeah.
So that was like horrific, but in a better way.
It's funny they say that because a big part of the book is a plague, and this was before COVID.
Oh dear.
Why?
Yeah. That's funny. Maybe you're a little psychic.
I hope.
Probably.
I like to think I'm a little witchy.
All right. The other thing I wanted to ask you, okay, so you're going to read a passage from it. Can you tell us kind of like where set the passage up, I guess. Set us up for going in there.
The book assumes that environmental kind of destruction happens at a really quickened pace. And in order to fight for resources without destroying each other, I was imagining that it was Trump in the US and Russia, that they created this chemical plague to kill each other without hurting the environment. But because they're idiots, the plague was, you couldn't like contain it. And so it just stayed in the air and was wandering around just killing everyone. So what ended up happening is China and India were like, oh, this land between us, New Bhutan, is still pretty intact. It has a lot of resources. Let's kind of create this barrier around this and keep us safe. And all of the people that are struggling to survive like race to this space to try to get in. And there's the last war. Some people are left outside of the barrier. Some people are left within. And this is 300 years later, the people that are inside the barrier in New Bhutan, kind of like this thriving community, are wanting to see what's going on outside. And so they create these SEPAs, these humans that are modified, that they can go out and record what's going on outside and then bring it back. And they can take that recording, they can take those memories out of them and study what's going on out there. So this passage, I just chose the first page because this book is full of twists and turns. And if I read anything else, I feel like I'm gonna give stuff away. So it's really hard to talk about. So anyway, this is the prologue when it shows the cycle of a SEPA, where she's coming back from a trip into the Banjar, and she's going to get her memories erased. So you get to see like the whole process of her normal experience. There's someone that is about to knock on my door, so stepping out of the helio in the city of Lhasa was how she imagined stepping onto a new planet might be like. The rush of a different kind of air, cool and fresh, igniting her lungs with life. The shades of green winking in every corner of her vision, greens that she could touch and smell. It was almost too much to bear in one moment, and her steps slowed involuntarily. The palace pilots didn't bother to get out of the helio and verify her delivery. After she'd cleared the blades, they shot off again without a word. They know by now that they can trust a SEPA to do exactly as she's told. A SEPA doesn't question an order. The dome rose up before her, a mountain of glass and copper reflecting the greenery around it. She let her eyes rove over it briefly, swallowing down the disdain she could feel climbing up her throat. Jewel would have fallen to her knees and cried, as he would have smashed those glass windows to pieces. But 288 was not a Banjarian. She was a SEPA, and SEPAs do not disobey. There was no door, but in its place, an oval archway leading into a mecca of tall, wide-leaf plants, casting their shade across the cool tile floor. Small raised pools of water mocked and tempted her, the rainbow of green hues glittering across her vision. The urge to reach out and touch it rooted her feet in place. She wanted to discover the feeling of life, the cool kiss of water. Most of all, she wanted to plunge her face in and drink it. She clenched her jaw, pulling her lips into a thin line. She was not here to touch, not here to discover. She was here to deliver. She swallowed tightly, her raw throat protesting as she turned resolutely away. Fans fashioned to look like leaves circled lazily above, creating a soft breeze the likes of which she could never have imagined. As she took in the grandeur, the rag she was wearing began to itch. A tickle of dirt and sweat was running down her back as she felt her body flush hot at how shockingly different the reality of Jewel was to those here in Lhasa. These physical reactions to her thoughts had only started after she'd been with Jewel for a few weeks and were very disturbing. She felt out of control of her body. She allowed herself to take a few deep, calming breaths, trying to quell her pounding heart. In that time, she took a full surveillance of the room and found herself meeting the eyes of Mira San, the SEPA project coordinator. She was seated on a long mat near the wall to the right of her, close to the entryway. Two women flanked either side of her, dressed in tan shorts and white shirts with flowing sleeves. 288 had several memories of Mira San's inspections of the SEPA bunkers. She'd always held a fierce, hard quality about her face as she surveyed their training. At the moment their eyes met, however, Mira's expression was completely different. 288 could tell that she was holding her breath by the way her chest was raised, and her eyes seemed to search hers hungrily. It was only a second, one quick moment in time before she snapped her mouth closed and rose in one fluid motion. As she unfurled from the ground, her deep emerald silks fell around her. Her sleeves fell over her shoulder, but were sliced along the underarm to allow for airflow. The billowing pant legs sliced on the outer leg seam. All of their clothes seemed designed to withstand the searing heat, a luxury those outside the barrier could not afford. That's it.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I will start with my question. or questions. You kind of already answered it. Like when I was reading it, I was wondering, is this SEPA, is 288 human? Is she not human? You know, because she seemed to have the parts, but then like they were saying she was built and whatever. She had this strange way about her that wasn't quite human, but then there was. So I was just asking, like, so you said she was human, so that's good.
Yeah, the idea is that they are human, but they are created in the lab in resident, but they're modified. So they have these pockets in their brain that memories will go into and can be taken out. So it's like they see things like they're seeing a movie. It's not connecting to them emotionally. It's just sort of there, you know, they're analyzing it and then they can pull it out and empty it from them.
It's funny you say like it doesn't connect to them emotionally, because what you just read, like she is reminding herself that she was there to deliver, but so there is something attaching to her, I think.
Yeah.
Or I'm spoiling something, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah. So yeah, SEPA is SEPA 288 has some other things going on. She's trying really hard to be a good SEPA. And later in the book, she's trying really hard to be human. So it's kind of a part of her journey.
That is fantastic foreshadowing then, if this is your page 1 and this is already the mood I'm in. Wow, no, seriously, well done.
It is, yeah, well
Yeah.
done. Absolutely. Because that was the first thing that I started thinking about was, is she human? Something's going on with this girl, you know, like she seems to be straddling both worlds, you know, like, and it also made me think of like what makes a human a human? Is it our memories? Is it our ability to remember things, or is it not?
Mm.
Like what makes our identity, you know? I had a question about that actually. Do our memories create our identities? Or can we have a sense of self without them? Are we whole without memories? Do memories only distract us? Do they have too much power over us? There's like this whole thing that comes up for me about memories and identity and what you wrote. And here's my question. Can you tell how this whole theme came about and why you think it's important to explore like this idea of memories? Like, is there a connection for memories and identity for you?
Yes. As far as the book goes, Sephora, who that's 288's name, eventually you find out, she feels like her memories create her identity. She is human when she has these connections to people, and so she's kind of clinging to them as hard as she can. There are other characters in the book that have some memories that they can take or leave as well. And I was thinking about your question about do they have too much control over us? And when we talk about trauma, like trauma, there's a lot of trauma in the book. And is trauma something that we should let go of and try to erase, or can we sit with it and let it be a part of who we become? Was a question that I had to ask myself a lot, and still kind of am in the sequel. It originally started with the idea, I don't know if you two are in the United States, but the alternative facts movement, the idea that the government can just change our idea of what the truth is. And so I wanted to play with that with memory control instead of just straight up brainwashing. So that's how it started, but it turned into something else as I wrote.
So you're gonna have a second in this series?
There's 3. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm editing the second one right now.
Oh, I'm jealous. All right.
So how big are these books? They are proper books, I think. I mean, there is enough food to fill 3 solid books. Can I see it? Because you had it before. Can I like see it? Because that is a brilliant cover as well, by the way.
Thanks.
I love this cover.
You even have it. It's
Oh, there it is. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, I designed it, and then my tattoo artist drew it, and then my son actually colored it. So it's a
Wow.
little project of
That's
love.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So I got a question as well,
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
earlier when I sent you the questions over email, I had the feeling that this was in a way inspired by Buddhism or Hinduism, maybe even. And I think that was when I read the first excerpt you sent.
Mhm.
Also, now that I hear you speak about this, that this is on a completely different sort of universe than what I initially thought. But in a way, with these people are almost received as some sort of deities in a way. Does it make sense when I say it like that?
What do you mean by these people, though? Are you referring to
Like the SEPAs, they are some sort of gods almost. Like they are sent out there. They decide what we receive as information. Like you said, like they can influence what we perceive as the truth. But I was just wondering, what kind of research did you do before that? Because I mean, it's clear where your inspiration comes from, but how did you make this work?
Right. Well, so speaking of like our voices, our original voices, I wanted the last place that survived in this crazy destruction of the world to not be in the US, right? I don't want to have that be the story. And I thought that Bhutan, because it doesn't have very many people and because it's so lush and beautiful, that it would be the final place, but that all these other countries that have more power around it would be like, we're going to take this. And I don't want to tell a story about a place that I don't know. I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to, I just don't want to do that. And so I really wanted to be careful, even though it is set in Southern Asia. There are a few places that are real in it. I didn't want to assume anything about those cultures and how they would blend. So I did research all the names. I did research the places to pull from different meanings from different cultures in that area. But I wanted the culture to be completely new and based on what these people would want, which is incredibly green. They just saw the world be destroyed. They want everything to be within nature. So all of their scientific advances are all working with like the human body and nature. And that's why the SEPAs were created, because that's what they have to play with, is organic matter. So yeah, I did do research, but not as far as like the religions and stuff. I took religion out of the culture.
Yeah.
They knew that religion started wars and they don't want wars, so they took that out.
Smart.
Yeah.
Does anyone, Eugene, you got questions?
Yeah, I think what I was going to ask was pretty well covered.
Yeah, one of my questions was kind of covered too.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
We're all on the same line here. That's actually a good thing.
Yeah. So just to be clear, the memory thing, what inspired you to do that was the fake news stuff?
Yeah, because the government, they're called the family. They control everything. It's a really strict society because they don't have very many resources. So it's like, it's okay that they control everything, but when they have this power to empty your memories, what are they going to do with it is the question. And so like, as the story goes, they're unfolding all these things. It follows 5 characters, and 2 of them are leaders of the country of New Bhutan. And so they're going to realize what they are doing without.
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
There's something going on with Mira-san.
Mira, yeah. Something
going on with her that I loved, but I don't quite know, I'm not there yet.
There's a lot of.
Is she one of them? She's one of the main characters though, right?
She is one of the main characters, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm glad you're reading it. Appreciate that.
Is it available outside of the US as well? Awesome. You know what's gonna happen.
Thank you.
Gonna get my hands on this one. No, seriously.
Thanks.
this is why it's good to talk about like themes in books, because it really, that's what draws me to reading, you know? So many people, a lot of people are like, you know, they read to see what happens next, like, or to figure out whatever. But I like to like get into a book that makes me think about things. Like, I don't want to read it quickly, you know? All right, so Eugene, what's the inspiration behind this story? And I did read your book, by the way.
Oh, thank you. There's what inspired it is something that I've seen, happen a lot in male-male romantic relationships, but that, for whatever reason, people don't like to talk about.
Interesting.
And I'm the sort of person who, if I see people tiptoeing around the elephant in the room, will go up and give the elephant in the room a big hug. And
yeah, you have the writer's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. All right. So set up the scene.
Okay.
You're gonna read.
Sam and Ernie are still, fairly, their relationship is developing, and they still, think everything's going to be just peachy, and while the but things are, are, as somebody put it, simmering beneath the surface. They haven't reached a head yet, but I think you'll be able to see how they're going to. And I introduced the old man in the restaurant for a couple of reasons. First, to show how, Sam and Ernie view authority, because that is a big theme. And of course, Ernie, for several reasons, is very, big on authority. And
very big.
Yeah. And also because Sam, excuse me, Sam and Ernie, just view the world in different ways. Sam tends to be more rational and more curious about what's going on in the world beyond his immediate experience, while Ernie tends to be more emotional and not to be curious.
Yeah, it was an interesting dichotomy to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based off of real life experience that you've seen and
yes,
been around.
Mm-hmm.
All right, take it away.
Okay. Ernie said, "This building is near the neighborhood, right?" "Right. Pretty much starts at Dreier Street, so it's a short walk." Ernie started going through the drawers in Sam's dresser. "What are you doing?" Sam asked. "Picking out what you're wearing, obviously. I'm going to show you off today." "You're going to dictate what I wear?" "Get used to it. When you're at work, you can dress however you like, but when we're together, I decide what you wear, and I've decided you're going to show your sexy self off and not dress like you're 50. "I don't dress as though I were 50. "The fuck you don't. Now, instead of dressing like you're going to play golf with the other old geezers at the country club, you're going to dress the way I tell you." Ernie pulled out a pair of shorts and a short-sleeved buttoned front shirt. When Sam got dressed, Ernie undid some buttons to make sure Sam showed off a good deal of skin, said, "You look hot like this," and shoved something in Sam's right back pocket. Ernie dressed in tight jeans and a tight golf shirt of shiny synthetic material, both of which showed off his physique, and stuck a blue bandana into his left back pocket. They walked hand in hand to one of the neighborhood's restaurants best known for brunch. Ernie requested a table outside, telling the greeter, "I'm in the mood to be seen today." He ordered the brunch buffet and coffee for both of them. At the table next to them, an old man nursed a Bloody Mary. After Ernie had gone inside for seconds from the buffet, the old man leaned over to Sam and said, "You've managed to find yourself a handsome boyfriend. He is your boyfriend, right?" Yes, he is," said Sam, suddenly tongue-tied, yet proud of his accomplishment. "And he's completely besotted with you. It's written all over his face." After a pause, the old man said, "I envy you young people, being able to be so free and open about your lives." "What do you mean?" Sam asked. "We didn't have all this in my day," said the old man, waving his hand toward the businesses lining 36th Street, many of them flying rainbow flags. "Back when the state had sodomy laws, which it did until 1979, if they thought your business catered to homosexuals, it'd be denied a license renewal on that basis alone for promoting criminal activity. That was unless you greased the right palms, of course. There are only a few towns on the shore or in the western part of the state that did it differently. And even well after that, we certainly wouldn't have walked down the street holding hands the way you and your beau did. Ernie returned with his seconds and sat down. The old man continued, not unless we wanted our heads cracked open anyway. But surely, Sam said, there were police around in case such things happened, right? Young man, the old man responded, you cannot be serious. Ernie shifted in his chair and scowled at the old man. If you got the police involved, the old man said, they'd let your attackers go and look for things to arrest you for, or just arrest you for inciting a riot or some such. That's if they weren't the ones attacking you, or if they weren't all busy undercover at the local porn store or in the park, which they often were. And if it did go to court, Ernie attacked a sausage with his fork and said, hey, Gramps, thanks for the lesson in ancient history, but can you wrap it up now? I'd like to eat in peace. The older man responded, I think it's important to know where we came from, not remembering the past and all that. Then he went back to staring into his Bloody Mary. After they were done eating and settled the check, Ernie told Sam, we're taking a little walk around the area. I'd like to show you off some more. Ernie put his arm around Sam's waist and guided him up the street. They stopped at the upbeat or gay-themed stores. Ernie delightedly pointed out to Sam whenever anyone seemed to check out either or both of them. At the end of the commercial strip, Ernie said, stand over by that wall. Why? Sam asked. I want to take your picture. I need a good one of you to print out and put in a frame on my nightstand. I thought you had one. Yeah, I do, but it's of you in a suit, and I want one like this. Sam went and stood by the wall. A little to the right, Ernie said. Turn just a bit more. Smile. Ernie took out his cell phone, took several pictures of Sam, and showed them to Sam. Which do you think is best? He asked. I don't like any of them, said Sam. Why not? You look hot in all of them. I don't really look that young, do I? That's not really how I see myself. Yeah, you do, and that's how you should see yourself. I think I like this one the best. On the way back, Ernie asked Sam in a suspicious tone, so what were you and that old geezer at the restaurant talking about anyway? About how nice it was that we could be free and open about our lives and how much worse it was in his day. And when was that, the 60s? Actually, he made it sound as though a lot of it had gone on into the early 80s at least. Sam, I was a little kid in the early 80s and you weren't even born yet. Sam thought that it was suspicious that Ernie would address him by his first name. Why are you so upset about it anyway, he asked. He just sounds like a complaining old crank who hates authority, just the sort of person who shouldn't be listened to. Well, what he did get me, so let me back up. Well, what he said did get me thinking about, that's just it. Your problem is that you think through these things too much. Some things are just the way they are, and that's that. Now, I got 13 years of lived experience on you, so you might as well listen to me. He must have more than that. Ernie sighed. I certainly don't doubt that. But are you going to listen to me, or are you going to listen to some bitter old rabble-rouser you just met, who probably had one too many Bloody Marys? Sam figured that anything that he could possibly say would be wrong. So he decided not to argue further. I guess you're right, he said. We do live in different times.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Showed a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of burning by now, because I had this question the moment I read it, and now when I'm hearing it even intensified. Like, Ernie is super dominant, super possessive, and he just makes all the choices, assuming that Sam is going to agree with it. Looking at this from the the LGBTQ sort of community, where we, love is love. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or whatever. But from people who are looking at a gay relationship, there is a sort of stereotype where either with women or with men, it doesn't matter, but there is always one taking on the male role and the other one's taking the female role in a way. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So is this a choice you made on purpose? Because this might feed into the whole stereotype where people are going to read Ernie into this stereotypical gay who's taking on the very male, he's being very masculine. And like, was that a choice, or is that something this character sort of grew into for you?
It was a choice, but what I wanted to do with that was to take that stereotype, play it straight at first, and then subvert it. Because later on, when Sam drags Ernie to the office party, that's pretty much the beginning of the end for that aspect of the relationship between Sam and Ernie.
All right.
Well, there's actually a little backstory to this question now. I was just talking to someone the other day and they said, I think I'm pansexual, but I will never tell anyone but you. And the reason why is because I've lived my life as a straight person and or heterosexual person. And I don't think that I can claim that identity without having gone through any struggles. And I was like, my response was, I would hope that eventually we don't have to have this struggle attached to our identity, you know? So when I was reading that conversation with the old man, I was thinking about like, do you have a concern that as things get more, I mean, obviously we're very far away from pure equality, but are you concerned that people that are born in the next few generations that don't see the same struggle, you know, they might be going to the Pride Festival to party without any idea of how it started? Like, does that bother you and does that worry you that they won't be carrying that that pain with them?
It does worry me that, you know, they won't know how far we've come, you know, even in my adult lifetime, and how far, and the things could possibly roll back. I mean, there's a lot that people, I think a lot of younger people do take for granted that, it has always been this way and always will be this way. Well, no. And I do believe that eternal vigilance is a price of liberty.
And for me, it also has a lot to do with the whole having pride thing. Like, we have pride because of the struggle.
Right.
Like, because nobody else thought nobody else, I guess, validated our identity, our selfhood. And so we have to do that ourselves, like, and that's why it's not like we have pride because we're like boastful and we're massive ego. Because we were kind of shat on, and throughout history, up and down, it goes in cycles. And we've had to claim our self-love for ourselves, basically. So I agree with that. I think history is very important to know.
I think that is still very relevant in the now as well, because, whenever you say with what kind of sexual orientation you identify, people always kind of expect you to explain. Like, you can say, like, I'm pansexual, and people go like, okay, but how come you ended up with a husband? Well, excuse me. What kind of explanation do I owe you? I mean, and it's so, I think this also ties into this story. Like, Ernie is very unapologetic about how he is in this relationship. And I think Sam still needs to sort of discover this or develop that sense of me. Am I right?
Yes. And later on, something, happens that, causes the light bulb to go on over his head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Because that is the most important part, I think, in this whole self-development, in whatever sexual preference you have, or maybe even in life, like the moment where you realize this is me. So I can always appreciate a book that sort of that focuses on that moment, because it's just so important.
Anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, my other question was about the dialogue. Your dialogue between the two main characters is so, like, I have heard that conversation. It was so real to me. The way that Ernie talks to him was just so like, and Sam being like, everything that I say is going to be wrong, so I'm just not going to say anything, was just like, got me. And so I'm wondering your technique for finding dialogue. Do you go and listen to people and write it down? Do you read it out loud with friends and see how it works? It just felt very, very real to me.
I primarily, listen to, people talk, listen to, a wide variety of people talking, so I can get the various voices right. because, you know, people, someone like Sam and someone like Ernie are just not going to talk the same way.
Yeah.
Right, like you have to know your character to see
Right.
what would be the thing that would go to, you know, top of mind for them.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, like, are you afraid that people are going to read this in a different sort of time guise? You know, if I can say it like that.
Time guys.
Time guise. It is, no, it's like we have a time guise. we read this in the now, where LGBTQ is a very relevant topic, but in like 10 years or 15 years, it might be so less relevant. And aren't you afraid in a way that people are going to read less of the importance in the story? But I think this is pretty much what Jillian already asked. So
Yeah, well, if they read it, maybe it'll open their eyes, like, oh shit, like LGBTQ history has not always been rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah.
You know? And getting drunk in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
And it might help them to kind of find a door into that whole world and to feel like they have some sort of community.
Yeah.
Or at least they can appreciate that, what that community had gone through, even though maybe, hopefully we do get one day that we do get to a place where it doesn't matter at all what your gender is, what your sexuality is, blah, blah, blah. And that there's, you know, no hate. That would be lovely. But
yeah,
even if we do get there, I think knowing what happened, like you said, to be vigilant, you know, and not to take it for granted, like,
Yeah,
would be smart. So, all right. So for me, this scene was very much like a study in contrasts. It kind of like, after I read it, it felt like it was a very important moment when you could see Sam kind of realizing, wait, maybe I don't even know who Ernie is. Or, you know, like maybe Ernie doesn't even know who I am.
Well, that is something that is brought out later on.
Right.
Yeah.
But even reading it just on its own, because I read that one first.
Yeah.
And then quickly got your book and I quickly read it. And I could, maybe it was from personal experience. Like I've had those moments where I'm with somebody that I should not be with at all. And there's like something that happens that means something to me, but it means nothing to them.
Right.
I actually like deride it, you know? And it's like kind of a slap in the face. And you realize like, holy shit, I should not, what am I doing? You know, like, anyway, that was a tangent, but that's why I love the scene so much. So nice job with that. And you didn't say any of that, you know, you just showed it. You showed your scene. Love it. All right, so I am fascinated by the psychology of doms and subs. I actually like used to write about that a little bit. And it's how Ernie is portrayed as, you know, because I read the book, I know he's a cop as well. He's a cop. People should do what they're told. You know, he treats Sam like a child almost. He's just this stereotypical dom personality type, right? When talking to the old man, like, did you make him a cop and a dom on purpose? Or was there, did you want to show like, because he gets mad at the old man when the old man brings up the police in the past. Right.
Well,
was there any, like, what was the thought behind that?
In terms of making Ernie a cop, there was a, you know, very early draft in which, you know, he was an appliance repairman. then I figured, given, the sort of person he is and the story and his attitude toward, authority, I figured make more sense for him to be a cop. That would, allow me to highlight all of that. And also, as you recall, there's the discussion, when Ernie has dinner at Sam's parents' house, Sam's mother says, talks about the difference between just being able to tell people what to do and having to placate a difficult customer in the car dealership.
It was a good conscious choice.
Thank you.
Because you kind of like blast that, stereotypical Dom personality, but Doms in real life, they're not necessarily like that, And I was also thinking like, holy shit, what if he offends somebody? But whatever, it doesn't matter. My book offends everybody, so we're good there. But yeah, I thought that was great. I just didn't know if maybe you knew somebody who was a cop and was gay, or which was also interesting. Like the fact that there were cops that were gay and they were checking out men. Like I never think of that, like ever. So it was like a curtain just opened.
Well, before I did interview a gay cop to make sure I'd be able to get some things right.
Perfect.
Cool. I just about the book itself, is it a full book? Is it a singleton book?
It's about 51,000 words.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a book. Here it is. It's
Yeah, these words are true and faithful. Okay.
Cool.
I love this art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where'd the art come from?
Thank you. I had it commissioned.
Nice.
I contacted artists from whom I previously bought something on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that Ernie or Sam? Is that supposed to be Ernie?
That's Ernie.
Okay. Beautiful. All right, where are we at?
You're probably going to ask me what inspired me.
I am.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write this huge world? And
I think the
both
first
of you amaze
inspiration
me.
is just being absolute batshit crazy. In a way. No,
That works.
I think, and this is also very much related to the time we live in, because at this point, we can cure a lot of things. We are almost at a point where being sick is a journey in a way, and we have advanced so much, and we are now looking into an era where we start enhancing people with mechanical body parts, bionics, you name it. So in a way, I am looking at things like what would happen if we would all just started having mechanical body parts, or what if the final frontier in a way to conquer death, because that's the ultimate thing that we are struggling with as humans. Like we will all die at a certain point. What if to conquer that we need to become machines? And I think that is just a very baseline of what the Singularian is about. What happens to us if we become machines, and what if the machine in a way becomes more human than we right now are? Like what would happen with the world if that is the case? And what I do with the Singularian is I basically play with all the differences, the different ways of viewing life, and also the world itself from all these different point of views. So I don't know if I already explained this, but these are monthly books. They're really small, accumulating into one giant volume at the end. And each of the little books is written from a different perspective. So there is the first book, who is written from the point of view from the actual Singularian. So the man whose human mind is being transferred into a machine, who is made to look like a human. Like if you didn't know, you wouldn't tell that he is not human. The second book is then written from the scientist who created him. And then in the third book, we meet someone who is on the complete other side of the spectrum, because he has been crossbred with animal DNA. So there's like, people are just experimenting with humans and just to conquer death, because that's the final thing we need to conquer. So again, to answer that question, I think in a way I am completely crazy, because I'm just, in a way, I am experimenting with all these things. So I would be the mad professor, the mad scientist. On the other hand, I am very much inspired by the possibilities, we have in this world, in this time. So that's a long story short.
It's going to get crazier too.
Sorry, say that again.
It's going to get crazier too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
The possibilities.
Yeah.
I'm betting.
All right.
All right.
So I'm reading a short passage, or actually it's one of the short stories, because these books are based on short stories. And I'm going to read the third one of book 2, which is called Exertion. Here we go. Interesting, Lester purred. His breaths were heavy in the hazmat suit. His footsteps sounded like thunder in the silence of the cell. In front of him sat a man, tied to a surgical chair. The bonds were made of steel, as the arms and legs were made of synthetic muscles and microhydraulic systems. Robotic arms, connected to wires, connected to computers and fail-safes, rested on the sides of the chair, awaiting command prompts. And can you feel this? The tip of the scalpel blade punctured the top layer of the gray wax-like substance that covered the anatomy of a fabricated hand. No, sir. Good, excellent. Lester suppressed a childlike jump of joy within his suit. With steps as light as a feather, he walked to the setup of computers and power generators glowing orange and humming quietly. Quinn, initiate transfer protocol. Let's see if this little clock can tick. The man in the chair watched with widened eyes as several bundles of data cables detached themselves from his body. There wasn't much left of his human anatomy. Only his torso and head were still made of skin and bones. Everything else was replaced, gray and stamped with a Sixsmith logo. Activate nervous system. Lester's voice sounded like the crack of a whip. The man in the chair groaned, quietly at first, more aggressively soon after. My chest feels heavy, he grunted. Heart and blood pressure are spiking, Quinn's mechanic voice responded. Lester turned to his computer and adjusted some of the dials. Keep going, he ordered. I want that power source fully disconnected. His body should run by itself. The sound of the energetic system powering down echoed across the lab. How is the spinal fluid holding up? All radiated fluids are stable. There was no sign of cell expansion nor of deterioration. Quinn was cold and calculated. His blood pressure is reaching critical. Detach power source, Lester cut in. His eyes were gleaming, his mouth curled upwards into a mechanic smile, or manic smile, actually. Sir, it feels like someone is sitting on me. Something is crushing my ribs. The man in the glass confinement's face contorted in pain. His scream was muffled by the sound of rattling chains as he tried to tear free from his bindings. Lester folded his hands together in delight. Perfect. Quinn, would you look at that? The nerve endings are connected and fully functional. Our subject feels pain. Our subject is about to die. Quinn's voice was flat as ever. The mechanical beeps and buzzes following his voice were equally monotonous in their pensive weight. He is going through a myocardial infarction. The remains of his human body cannot sustain the physical exertion his mechanical parts require. Be more specific, Lester snapped, having come too far to see his work explode yet again. His heart is about to burst. But the power source is disconnected. He is alive, Quinn, alive! The sound of the subject's scream fell flat against the glass pane, losing most of its turbulence to Lester's ears. His eyes were bright in fascination while he watched the heart rate monitor. The spikes intensified, size-wise and in frequency. The beeps occupied his mind like the countdown of a clock on New Year's Eve, until the beeps became a long, annoying noise. He's flatlined. We lost him, Quinn concluded. Lester tore off his helmet and threw it on the floor, shattering the glass screen that was meant to protect him from any hazardous particles. With stomping strides, he left the cell and dropped himself into his chair, ruffling his fingers to his uncombed hair with a sigh. What went wrong? His gaze moved back to the screen in the corner of the lab. There is still too much human. Specifically, the heart can't handle it. Perhaps you should look into gene splicing. Surely there is animalistic DNA that would empower the cardiovascular system. The idea itself is preposterous, Lester exclaimed, tugging off his gloves angrily and throwing them too on the floor. I will not use Griswold's technology to push my own advancements ahead. Have you forgotten why we are doing this? How dare you even suggest this? It's either that or replacing the entire cardiovascular system. How much human do you wish to retain in your final design? Quinn let out a series of crackling sounds, processing the options he was already going through. I don't care how many human parts are left. I need the human mind transferred into indestructible bodies. I want your system inside a functional frame as soon as possible. If Griswold manages to unleash his human-animal hybrids into the world, all my work has been for naught. Humanity will be lost. Well then, Quinn's voice before I can't read anymore, I'm sorry. Well then, Quinn said, with the faint sound of eager anticipation. You know what they say about not succeeding at first. And that was it.
Thank you.
Hit me.
All right. Who wants to start?
I can start. Oh man. Okay. So we had some questions. I read it with my partner. So the animal splicing piece and the wanting to live through robots, and we're getting the vibe that Lester and Griswold are like enemies.
Yes.
In the end there. So we know why they're trying to defeat death. And maybe that's a good noble thing that Lester's doing, maybe not. It seems pretty messed up, but what is Griswold's motivation in making these animal hybrids? And are they dangerous?
Yeah, no, this is actually a really cool question, because in a way this comes back to, again, our current world where most of the stuff being done is based on money. It's about becoming the biggest company, is about earning the most with the advancements we make. And this is how the initial war between Sixsmith and Griswold started as well. They were both looking into a program that could defeat death, one by looking into turning us into machines, and the other one by looking into how we could crossbreed humans with the regenerative functions of animals and everything so that we would become immortal. In a way, to become the biggest company, like to get the monopoly on life itself. So yeah, of course they are in a huge competition, because whoever wins, gets the price of life itself.
Scary.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. I hope it never happens.
So are there hybrids in the story that have animal characteristics?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There's book 3 is about a guy. His original name is Gideon Crowby, and he was given black wings, so he goes by the name of Crow. And he is one of the splice who has the most obvious parts inside. Like you can see his wings; they're huge. But there are other people as well who are more like shapeshifters, like they can sort of create claws or they can see in the dark. I don't know, what's the easy example? I don't know, has any of you seen Sweet Tooth on Netflix? There is this scene, and I just loved it. It's about this boy who is a sort of stag as well, but he looks around in the dark, and you can see the eyes reflecting, and that's always kind of what I see when I have these animal eyes inside of a human. But that's just me being sidetracked. Sorry. Yes, there are a lot of interesting animal splices in there. Yeah.
So my one question, I thought reading that passage, I want to know how, I mean, I can kind of maybe guess, but I want to hear it from you, like how this character of Lester came to be, because Quinn seemed more human a little bit than Lester. And like Lester didn't give, any shits about the people, the humanity that was actually alive, even though he was trying to conserve humanity forever. And then, but he was so driven by his desperation that all that mattered to him was whether or not it worked, Yeah.
In a way, I play a lot with the morally gray zones in here. Like Lester is doing the wrong things for the right reasons, in a way. And on the other hand, Griswold is no better, and maybe he would be doing the right things for the wrong reasons because he just wants to be rich and has to have the monopoly on life. So I wouldn't say that Lester is a bad guy or is inherently bad. He is just completely blinded by what he's trying to do. He wants to win this race because I think in a way he also realizes that what Griswold is doing might even be worse than putting a human in a machine, because in the essence you would still be human, your thoughts would still be human, your instincts would still be human, you would just have a different body, whereas Griswold is actually fundamentally changing the human being. So would he actually be preserving the human race? And I think that fear, exactly what you said, is driving him to a point of madness where it doesn't matter what he has to do as long as he succeeds in getting there before Griswold does. And it's funny that you say that this Quinn, who is at this point almost like an artificial intelligence, he is the mind of the original scientist put into a computer to help Lester get to the point where he can upload him into the Singularian. And he is in a way more human than Lester. And how does that happen? Because at this point he is a computer. How does that work? And I kind of leave it to the readers to make up their own opinions about that, because in the end this entire story is about a man inside a machine having to figure out who he is and what his position in life is, because obviously people are going to hunt him down, especially and I think that was one of the questions I saw in my mailbox as well. Like, there is talk of this cataclysm. So what happens and why are people hunting him now? Obviously, because he is involved in a way, the end of the world. And there are a lot of Singularians at some point in time, and they go absolutely nuts. And then he survives and he wakes up and he has no idea what happens, except that there's 2/3 of humanity is just gone. What happened? He doesn't know. And that's his journey. So yeah, in a way, he is a lot more human than anyone because he has to rediscover all that.
The part that we read, the Singularian doesn't exist yet.
No.
Okay.
He's working on creating them. Yeah.
Okay. And so most of the story you're saying is later when he's created a lot of them.
Yes.
But now he
Even
wakes
after
up.
that.
Okay. And then when he wakes up, there's a lot of spliced people.
Yeah.
And my question is, in this world, I was trying to imagine the world like outside. Are there a lot of just regular human beings left or no?
No. So of the entire human population, I think only 1/3 is actually left. And in that third, there is now all of a sudden also spliced people who are not actually human at all. The thing is that there is a time gap of about 4 centuries between this moment of creation and the moment of him waking up again. So there is the entire destruction and, ruining of the world going on in about 4 centuries. And I leave that as a gap. Like, throughout the story, you can fill in some of those gaps, like what happened and what didn't happen. But that's the journey that, like, he has to discover what happened, because in a way that is what's going to either keep him alive or maybe even get him killed. We don't really know.
Cool.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, cool. All right.
I like that.
Yeah, I noticed, I read, going through some of the excerpts, your reference to Hela.
Gila, yeah.
Yeah. When I saw Gila and I thought immortality, my mind immediately jumped to Henrietta Lacks. Was that delivered on your part?
No, and I have to be completely honest with you, that name never really came across for me. So I had to look that one up. Gila is actually an abbreviation for I could give you the actual meaning, but it's kind of a bit of a spoiler. But Gila is the original artificial intelligence that was meant to help Lester in this case to create the computers powerful enough to make this all happen. And that computer is a she, and she is going to be more important later on because she is the only artificial intelligence that survives the whole cataclysm, and she is hidden somewhere in a bunker. Nobody really knows. And that is also one of those threatening factors. Like, what if there is one giant supercomputer who knows about everything? What are people going to do with that?
I did have one more question, and it was about your format. Why did you decide to write it in these short little monthly short stories rather than a full novel?
Because for me, it's also still evolving. This story, it takes me places as much as I take it places. Like every month, I write the story that sort of goes further from where I left off, but I also make the illustrations. So if I would do this as a book, it would take me a long time. And now I actually set the deadlines, and I try to keep people curious to what's coming next. And in a book, it's easy. Sometimes it's easy to just get lost in it and binge it and be done with it in a day, and you just have the book read. Whereas with this, I'm trying to take the time to let it evolve, but also to let people think about what is happening and think about the choices and the motivations of the characters before they move on to the next one.
I think it sounds really fun to do and really freeing as a writer. Except for the aspect of I've already committed to these things that I already put out there. And so it's going to keep me from going here that suddenly I want to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I have a million stories inside my head that I would just want to write down, but I can't right now because I'm working on the Singularian. And in fact, I'm about to finish up season 1, and it has already been expanded to season 2. So next year, I know I'm going to write 12 more of these books as a season 2. So I know that writing a big book right now is not really on the table. Although I am querying a full-length novel, and there are moments where I write on different projects, but this is just it right now. So I totally see how that would stop anyone from doing a format like this. Yeah.
At the same time, though, you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is the ultimate freedom. I mean, I produce these things 100% myself. I mean, I work together with a local printing company to print this, but I pretty much do everything myself. Like I have an editor who goes through the spelling and the grammar twice, once before and once after. But other than that, this is 100% me and my work, and that is also, I think, one of the reasons why I'm not putting this on things like Amazon, because that would give me royalties over something that I spent hours and hours and hours for. This takes up like 60 hours of work for one of these books throughout the month, so it's a lot of work, and to get like 6% of that hurts. So this is the way that works for this format, just a monthly thing on Patreon, and now actually on Kickstarter as well, where I had the whole bundle by the end of the year. So
that was smart with the Kickstarter and the Patreon.
Yeah.
But Amazon, when I was doing the publishing thing, another reason why I wanted to self-publish was because if you traditionally publish, you only get maybe 7 to 12% of royalties. And then you have to pay your agent out of that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, F this, what is going on?
Yeah, that's insane.
So I chose Amazon, and now I'm realizing well, wait, why do I want to give half my money to Amazon? I mean, they do give you 70% royalties in some cases, and
you have to make it for them alone, then you can't share it in any other bookstores.
I read that for your first book, when you don't know what you're doing, you should do that. Just have it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And because I know there's, Apple Books and everything. And there's actually some blockchain stuff I'm interested in. But that's a whole other thing.
It's funny that when we talk about the percentages of royalties we get, like for my regular novel, I'm okay with that. Just please can I get an agent, and please can I have this published? I'd be okay with 2%. I'm fine. But with this whole Singularian thing, and there's just, I don't know, I couldn't. But and I think it's because of the artwork and because of all the other parts of what I'm doing besides the writing, that I could not live with myself if I'd agree on percentages. Like this is 100% mine. I'm doing everything myself, so I deserve the full payment for it. Please.
Well, my book took me a long time, so
yeah.
I was like 10%. No.
Yeah.
What's nice about Amazon is I mean, Amazon is obviously evil, but
Yes. Well,
there's nothing nice about them.
Not necessarily.
But you can get author copies for just the cost of printing.
Yeah.
So I'm selling in independent stores around my state, and then I can, not be giving money to Amazon selling the book. So that's really nice.
That's smart.
And that's where half my sales come from. Yeah.
Little light bulb just went off. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody saw it.
I was gonna say that, you and I, Sandy, our books aren't necessarily focused on gay characters as far as I can tell. And I'm not saying that queer authors need to write about queer characters, but since this is an LGBTQ plus panel, I did want to kind of bring it up. My second book is going to look at fluid genders, and my first book has 3 queer characters in it, but they're not the main characters. And I don't know, when I was writing the book, I wasn't thinking about all the messages that I'm sending, but when I read it, I'm like, oh, this is the message I'm sending. And I was wondering if you had any of that going on in your story eventually.
Yes, actually, it's not even an eventually, like stuff is already happening with one of the characters, and that's he who discovers that he is interested in a lot more than just girls, whereas he realizes that if he is attracted to someone, he's attracted to the person and not necessarily the fact that it's the opposite gender or the same or anything. So it is there in the story, but it's not really a very present theme or anything. Like I try to make it like, ideally you would have this stuff blend in without it become noticeable, because that would normalize it.
Yeah.
This stuff just happened. A person falls in love with another person. And especially with the fact that these people aren't even human. So there is like a lot of intercultural, intersexual thing going on. I don't want to make this sound weird though, that there is like people doing stuff with animal people. Like, that's not the case.
No furries.
Like, they are human in base. I kind of wanted to clarify that, because I had someone ask me about this once, and she told me the story about beta reading for someone where there were 2 werewolves doing the thing while in their werewolf form, and I was like, I'm not sure I want to know how that works. So I try to stay away from that. And I think love in general is an interesting question for someone who is machine, or is he not really a machine, or is he human? So how would that even work? And I think when it comes to being queer, that might even be the closest thing to being to what Quinn ultimately will find himself to be.
Plus, Jillian, you had kind of what I thought was some gender bending in your first novel with the Z and Zer thing.
Yes. The first, well, one of the spoilers of the story is that New Bhutan thinks that they're the last civilization, and everyone outside of it is, they call it the Banjar because they're like barbarians to them. But really they have this amazing rich culture that in many ways is more forward thinking than they are. And one of those is that they don't have genders at all. Yeah. So, but you don't get to meet them very much in the first book. Like, you see them in the beginning, but you don't actually get to meet them as much.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I think that's kind of the way long, if humans survive, if we survive like 1,000 more years, I think gender is not going to be like a thing. Like, that just makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You're just human.
You're just you know.
I just wanted to get something in edgewise quickly. When you're talking about the moral shades of gray and doing the right thing for the wrong reason, the wrong thing for the right reason, that really put me in mind of some of the spy novels from the Cold War, especially The Spy Who Came In from the Cold. So, that struck a chord with me when you said that.
Yeah. I think it's also a very human thing to get lost in your morals. Like you can be so convinced of doing the right thing, while the motivations behind it can be absolute crap.
Right.
And the other way around. I think that's what makes us humans, that the choices we make to do stuff that are right or wrong, and who even decides what is right or wrong.
Right.
To me, that's a very interesting way of thinking.
All right. Am I up?
You ready?
Yes,
I'm
you've got
ready.
this.
Where's my book? Oh.
I just finished Vivian's book.
Sweet.
So good.
Okay, so what inspired me to write this? Definitely Joan Crawford. She just fascinates me as a person. She's an old Hollywood actress, for anyone who doesn't know. She was big in mostly the 30s and 40s, but her career spanned from the 20s all the way up into the 60s. So learning about her and her life, I learned some things about her bisexuality, and I was like, there's a fucking story there. So I wrote it. So that's what inspired me. And there are other inspirations came, like Jillian, like you said, I didn't set out to say a bunch of things when I wrote it, but I noticed I was. And then, so I kind of like zoned in on some of those. So this scene has absolutely no dialogue. There is dialogue in my novel, but not in this scene. I did not do that on purpose. I just realized that. But whatever. This is when, so basically, Billy and Nadine are two chorus girls, and they're working for this guy, J.J. Schubert. And they kind of, they get to know each other. There's like an attraction between them. They get to know each other. They open up to each other, which they don't do to other people or with other people. And I guess they fall in love, and this is the point where Nadine like realizes that she's in love. So I think that's a good prologue for that. Okay. Sorry, I have to say, Nadine lives at the Plaza Hotel, and the girls work at a theater called the Winter Garden Theater, but they call it the Garden, okay? So it's not actually a garden. All right. Nadine felt different inside. Walking down the plaza steps, out through the city, through the garden, backstage, the turn of joy across her lips, it was as though she owned everything she touched, and everything was made for her hands. For her to move, to mold, to take, to feel against her, pounding with her heart. The world became a fire, blood red and white like teeth, and she held it up like an offering, watching it eddy and yawn and shake against her skin. She brought the fire into her mouth, down to the innermost of her, where nothing could ever get to it, and she did not get burned. Walking together into the dressing room, Nadine could feel Billy's pulse in her soul. The girl's smile was a buoy, scaling the foam-tipped heights, holding her up toward the sky. Billy was so full of life, it dripped from her, the way she'd take Nadine, hanging on to her, giddy, fingers tight on her skin. It was like she'd felt the fire too. While the Corns got ready for the show, sticking their toes into tiny shorts, passing a flask around, rowdy and rare. Nadine finished early and noticed Billy was gone. She wanted to tell her how much she just loved her face, sneak a kiss in the bathroom or in a closet before their march to the wings. Crashing out into the hall through the crisscrossing people, she saw her lover right away with J.J. Schubert, heading toward his office in the opposite direction, their backs to her, and her blood shivered. How the devil had a grip on what she held so dear. They went inside, and Schubert closed the door, his blinds already shut. The fire howled from Nadine's fingers, and it was strange how it flooded the hallway, up the walls, curling back in a wave toward her, raining down in spiraling animal madness. It returned to her changed, 1,000 tiny needles, eerie and cold, stabbing through the pores of her skin, a winter made by evil, icing out her guts. She flew into the bathroom and told herself to be calm, pacing, the walls spinning, the floor. Schubert was going to touch Billy. No, he was going to make Billy touch him again. Staring as the floor raced beneath her heels, Nadine wondered when it was going to stop already, when he'd move on to the next girl. What chilled her most was none of them ever truly had the choice. Feeling her insides turn to dust, she laughed, loud, and the laughter turned into a growl, piping through her steely throat, not caring who heard her, how badly she wanted to hurt that man, to bring his empire to its knees. Her mind snaked through all the ways she could ruin him, his reputation, his pride. He had so much power, though, and not even just in New York. He had theaters all over the nation, and his brother Lee was in Hollywood, making million-dollar deals that very moment. The Schuberts were also affiliated with Marcus Lowe in various ways, and Nadine respected Lowe. He was a decent man. As far as she knew, he didn't force women to please him. He earned it. Of course, Nadine had powerful friends, some who wouldn't think twice to toss a little justice if she asked, but it would take an army to flatten the Schuberts. How she wished she was an army. Even knowing the people she did, she still did not have much sway in the world. Sitting on the radiator, trying to contain the cyclone inside of her, she thought to take an extra pill, but she didn't want to. She kept thinking of Billy in there, her beautiful body, her spirit, spilled out for an unworthy human. He was taking her, seeping her out through the cracks in her will. Nadine lit a cigarette, inhaling, exhaling. She frowned. Then, as the smoke laced upward beside her, she had the thought to go knock on Schubert's door. She put her cigarette out. Every scathing word she was going to level him with, grinding toward a wayward and bitter cruelty she didn't think she could control. Like she gave a damn. Okay.
Wow. No, this is beautiful. I mean, it's so vivid. It's like I can feel this. This is insane. In a very good way. Don't misunderstand.
No, I get it. I see your face.
Yeah. No.
Thank you.
Wow. Because it is so vivid and so real and so easy to experience. And you just said, I went into the zone. Where do you go when you write stuff like this? What's your mind doing? Do you watch movies internally? Do you recall real life experiences? How does that work?
All right. honestly, sometimes it feels like, okay, I definitely see it in my head, right? I hear it in my head.
Mhm.
I cannot finish a scene until I see it and hear it. And it's like real to me in my head. And that's probably where all the descriptions come from and everything, because I'm putting myself there and I'm, you know, reacting as the character, right? And there's not a whole lot of personal experience in this. There's some here and there, but it's mostly based on my research. And I would put out there that a lot of the things the girls feel, I have felt. So I'm basically like putting myself there, thinking of myself at their age, because they're about 20 years old. And just thinking about what I can pull from me that makes sense for each character. But it might be coming from different situations. You know, I was never a chorus girl, you know, never met Joan Crawford, unfortunately. But there is another thing that I kind of just realized, and I remember talking about it once a while ago. There is some sort of trance that happens. Like, I don't know if that happens with you guys, but if I'm seeing it, I'm there. I feel like I'm living it and I'm writing it. It's like nothing else exists at the moment. So I guess I can only describe that as sort of a trance. Something like that. It's nothing mystical or anything. It's just I'm in the zone, I guess, you know. Just hyper focused.
I call that when I'm reading. Like I'm writing, but I'm actually reading, you know? Like I'm so in it that I'm experiencing it rather than creating it.
I call that being the medium of the story. Like the story tells itself and it needs you to be written down. So that's all we do.
It's like we're just channels, right?
Yes.
So good. I'm glad.
You're not the only one.
Thank God.
Well, I will say, Vivian, that I'm glad that you said that you were pulling the feelings from your own experience, because I would have been like, how did you write that without having experienced it? Because having been with, having had a forbidden lesbian love affair in my early 20s, because of circumstances that I'm not going to go into, maybe later when we get to know each other.
Private conversation.
Yeah, the feelings were so familiar and so real. Like this, just all of the ways that you describe the way that the body is reacting and what's going on, and like, and it's throughout the whole book. Like you keep it going throughout the whole book, and every time it's different, but it's always real. It's always accurate. And it's just so impressive. So good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh yeah.
My questions are pretty much covered in what we've already discussed. So.
All right.
I don't know about that, but you asked what part of the book was invented and what was based off of Joan Crawford's life.
Right.
So any situation I put Billy in, I read somewhere that Joan Crawford either said she had done that, or that happened, or people close to her had said it happened. And I've read all the biographies of or autobiographies of people who knew her and were close to her, and there's usually tidbits in their books about her. I don't know, I get like a feeling of how she would react, but mostly, other than like her interacting with Nadine, because that never happened. The only thing about that that's real is that I think it's well known, but other Joan Crawford fans might not agree. I think it's well known that she's bisexual, and I've heard from multiple sources that she had slept with at least one chorus girl in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I read somewhere else that the chorus girl was a prominent chorus girl. So she was well known, I guess. So that's their entire relationship comes off of. And then I just imagine, like, what are they going to experience with all these men that they have to sexually please in order to keep their jobs? How would that get in the way, you know? Like, so
Was Schubert real? Was he a real?
Everyone's real except Nadine, Manny, and Cora. Everybody else is real.
Wow.
Brings a book to such a different level if you know that, you know, stuff is real.
It's yeah.
When I for the first time read that that excerpt, the one thing that stuck to me was the imagery of how this fire worked with her. Everything else was beautiful, but the fire stuck to me, and that got me thinking. We of course know that fire is used as the element of passion. You know, when we are in love, we feel this fire burning, we become warm, and everything is heated up and everything. But I was just thinking, like, is this a conscious choice? Like, is this exactly the reason why you chose to go with fire? Or, I mean, what would happen if this scene would be grounded into the earth? Like, would that affect the story if you would play with other elements of description for this story?
Wow. So the fire thing, like you said, fire is passion, and passion can come out in different ways. It can come out as love, it can come out as hate, it can come out as rage. So when I first started with the bringing in the element of fire, to me that was just, oh, she's in love, so like everything's like vivid and hot, you know, dancing, and she's like realizing she's in love. So, and if you know her throughout the rest of the book, she's kind of like not into love, you know what I mean? Like, so this is like a moment for her, right?
Yeah.
And so I get the, you know, the passion going, and like she controls it. Like she just feels, you know, like when you're like infatuated with somebody or an idea and you just feel like it's for you, like you own it, and like you just have different feelings about it. And then because there's a thin line between love and hate, I just thought, as soon as she switches to the hatred, like when she sees her with Schubert, the fire then turns into something that's against her, you know, like she loses control of it, and then it comes back to her, but it's different. It's not the same. It's cold. Turns her to dust, you know?
Yeah.
So did I answer your question?
Yeah, and I yes, very much. And in a way, I think it's also maybe a strange question, because in my mind, I was reading this scene with all the different elements in there. Like I could totally put this, for example, into the earth, where, you know, she could feel the ground shake beneath her feet. Or where she could just feel the earth crumble beneath her. And I was just thinking about how would that influence this character, because I totally understand the fire in her, and I love the way the fire is both good and evil. Like it is love, but it is also hate. And maybe this is just my brain thinking in different ways, or I was just searching for what would happen to the character, or like what would be the essence of this character if you would change that around. And I realized it's a very little thing, because it's only like 4 or 5 sentences in this entire passage you read, but it was so important to me, and it just got me thinking.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, elsewhere in the book, I do play with like the ground shaking beneath her, blah, blah, blah. That's just, I don't know. The elements, I do astrology as well. So I'm familiar with the elements, the symbology of them.
Yeah.
So I use that, I guess.
There's a lot of the
character so much more depth. Yeah.
The moon is in there.
Yeah, a lot.
I looked at the girl, I have charts for the girls. So I went way into it.
But I think that's what makes it so real as well. I mean, because you went the distance on this, you can tell that it's real. It's not something you sort of improvised, you know?
Right. No, I spent a lot of thought, and
yeah,
I really try to get into each character's head. And Joan is not easy. She's complicated, and she's young at this point, so she's not quite, you know, the Hollywood glamour girl that she becomes. So she was difficult. But yeah, it is interesting to just use elements like that and kind of, you know, not overdo it, but use them as fucking imagery, because everybody kind of knows what water feels like, you know.
Yeah, they become defining aspects of a character in a way.
Yeah,
which I love. I love that when that happens.
I wonder, I can't even remember. That might be the only fire thing I have for her. I'm not sure. But the element of blood and teeth, like that's a theme kind of throughout it. And the body, like Julian was saying, I'm very, very fascinated by how my body reacts to certain emotions. And so I put that shit in there. So it was a good question, made me think a little bit.
I've been trying to formulate how I want to ask you a question, Vivian, without just going off about my own opinions about your book.
You can do whatever you want.
So having read the whole thing, it's a lot. It felt a lot to me about the way that women are fighting for to exist freely, and while dealing with all of the different traumas that are coming at them. And it was interesting to me because Billy, who I love so much, I love that character so much. She really she really brought to life the different little things that happen when you're living with trauma. The first part that struck me was her fear that everyone hates her. Like she doesn't trust that anyone actually wants to be her friend. Any little thing she says, she's completely consumed with regret and like, oh, everybody, you know. So that was an amazing start. And then just everything that happened to her sexual trauma that she's confused about was so real. And then, but it's very personal. And then on the other side, you have Nadine, who she has some trauma, like she's witnessed death and all these things, but she feels more like a window because she knows so many people that you get to see all these other things that are happening in the era, like illegal abortion and murder and police and prostitution, all these things. And I was just wondering if you intentionally kept Nadine, if you were intentionally using Nadine's status as a window to be able to like look at all these characters or not.
Yeah, but that kind of happened organically, to be honest. I realized, okay, if I was going to be true to Joan Crawford's story, and yet I knew there was this whole other story going on with it, like it's not just about Billy, you know, it's about like their industry, it's about how women were treated. So I had to use Nadine to see other things, because unless Joan said it, I'm not going to do it. you know, like unless somebody somewhere said Joan did this, or she said she saw this, or if she says it, I'm not going to go near it really, other than within their relationship, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, I use Nadine as a window. Hell yeah. And she kind of ties like all those, the real people in the story, they're actually all kind of connected. Like Broadway was smaller back then, and it was more of a community. Like people knew each other more than I think. Well, they probably do now. I have no idea what Broadway is like right now. They probably know each other still. But so, and what I knew was going on with Joan, like where she was going, like who she definitely spoke to, when, blah, blah, blah. I would use Nadine to kind of rope Billy into that. So she's kind of like, Nadine is actually like helping Billy along in her, you know, progression toward becoming a star. Neither of them are aware of that, but I am. And yeah, this is going to continue through. There's so much. I don't want to mention it, but there's so much. If you had a window back then, or if you were like a fly on a wall, there's so much. It's crazy. And nobody talked about it at all because you didn't do that in those days.
I think that's still pretty much going on. There are still such a big taboo on a lot of things that are happening.
Probably.
We have only scratched the surface of an age where we start talking about this. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, people like make fun of people now, like, oh, what are you, triggered? You know, like,
yeah.
Or, oh, you're gonna cry.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, asshole, am I? Like, I make it uncomfortable, I'm gonna do it right in front of you. You know?
I'm gonna cry even louder because of it.
Right, I'm gonna wail. I'm gonna
Jeez.
fucking wail.
Yeah. Wow.
All right, any other questions?
Is your book available outside of the US?
Yeah,
Gonna get my hands on that one too.
I think you can. Wait,
Awesome.
you're in the Netherlands?
Yeah. You know,
It should go to you because it goes to like the UK, you know, Germany, Spain.
All right. If it goes to Germany, it's fine. I can even, that's cool. Just I've had it a couple of times where people forgot to sort of put it on international availability, and I was trying to order it and it just wasn't available in my region, and I felt like I lived in such a tiny shitty country then. But
Aw.
no, well.
I think mine is. I'll have to check actually.
Sorry?
I'm not actually sure if mine is. I'll have to look.
I'll check it out. Otherwise, I'll let you know.
Let me know.
I'm sorry, I've checked my notes and I just had one more question for Vivian. What sorts of research, in terms of writing historical fiction in general in that time period, what sorts of resources are available so that you can get things like speech patterns right?
All right, that's a good question. First of all, I learned the slang, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they are 20, the girls are 20 years old. Right. So they would use some of the slang, but they're not going to use all of it all the time, right? Mm-hmm. I also watch a lot of old movies. So I get their slang, their language. However, the way old movies are, they're not how people actually talked back then, you know? Like people talked like normal people back then. They were grumpy, they sweared, you know, I don't know, they were concerned with the same things we're concerned with, you know, for the most part, like basic things. So I just mixed it up with mainly what sounded right to me and using a little bit of slang, or like, you know, one of the characters, she's very sophisticated, so she talks, you know, a little haughtily, and then another guy, he's basically from the gutter, so he doesn't really talk formally.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, so you just have to be conscious of that, because I definitely had to go back and change some things.
Mhm.
Like I had Cora and Nadine talking about how Billy might be her girlfriend. Right?
Mhm.
They didn't talk like that then. Like they didn't even think, like even women that were together in the 20s, most of them, there were obviously some, like in the village, in Greenwich Village, it was very gay there, very queer. They might have considered themselves partners or girlfriends.
Mhm.
But even girls like sleeping with each other, and sleeping with other people, the term lesbian was not really a thing that they said. Thinking of each other as girlfriends, like I have Nadine kind of think about it in kind of a joking way, like shit, we were like almost like girlfriends. So I had to go back and change that, because they wouldn't be talking in that way. So yeah, it's kind of a bitch, but I think I did a pretty decent job. Right, Jillian?
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
Yeah, I think you used the word sweethearts. We're almost like sweethearts or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which they said.
Yeah.
They would say that. So yeah.
Actually, I do have a question from our email correspondence, because or maybe we were messaging on Twitter, but I said, I don't read romance novels at all. And I was like, whoa, because it gets a little saucy. And I had said, I had said that to you, and you're like, well, this isn't a romance novel, it's historical fiction. And at the time, I didn't even know till I finished it that it was based on anyone real. So I was reading it totally thinking it was fiction. And
Well, it is fiction.
it is, but you know what I mean. I just wonder why are you shying away from it being considered romance, or is it okay to be both for you? Like, what's your motivation for
Okay, I am shying away from it, but it's not because of me. It's because of most readers that read romance novels. I don't think they would like mine. That's why I'm trying to call it something different, because I don't want all these people to think, oh my God, it's just a love story, and there's a certain formula that most romances go through. There's simpler language, or like less flowery language. So I just don't think they would appreciate it, or I think they would hate it, actually. So that's why I'm kind of like steering them away from it. It was a thing, like, for me, like, what is this book? Like, because even historical fiction has some formula about it. So that's why I'm kind of just saying maybe it's a literary romance or literary fiction with a love story, because the romance is the main part of it.
Yeah, but it is not a romance.
There's other things going on at the same time. So
it kind of goes back to marketing and the whole game that we have to play. Like, what is this book? Who is it for?
Right. Yes.
We've gone full
and
circle.
It's I don't have a thing against romance novels. Like, that's why I got to be careful. Like, it's not a romance novel, I can't act like that. But it, because it's okay if it is a romance novel, but it's just not. So I just would rather, steer the right reader toward me and steer probably the wrong reader away from me.
It's funny how at the beginning of the conversation you said something like, I don't know what I'm doing with the whole publishing and everything, but it sure sounds like you know pretty well what you're doing with this.
That's great, because I feel like I don't know.
No, your arguments here are super legit. And the way you think about how you target your audience sure sounds like you know a lot. So well done on that one. You convinced me.
Thank you.
I put my book as YA. So normally I write a lot more of a literary fiction style than this one. I had to tone down a lot of my descriptions and my language for it because I wanted it to be a YA book. And so far, my number one audience of readers is about 60 to 7-year-old women. And they really like it. They're like, yeah, I read your book, it's so good. I'm like, maybe it's not for, I don't know. Like, what is YA anymore? You know?
True.
I think YA might be more the content itself. And yeah, you would have to simplify like the writing a little bit.
Yeah.
Which isn't easy. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm settling on upper YA.
Good choice.
Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea, Jillian, when book 2 is going to come out?
The goal was Halloween.
This year? Wow.
However, I forgot about how in September teachers literally do nothing else except think about their students. So I'm gonna try, but it's pretty hard.
Yeah, but somewhere by the end of this year in any case.
Is the hope, yeah. This one, yeah, because this one is a lot easier for me to edit because I already knew the story, I already knew the characters, you know, those big shifts in plot aren't going to be there. It's more of just the copy editing.
Yeah. Wow, cool.
Yeah, I think it's so much better than the first one. I'm so excited about it.
You should get better.
Yeah.
I think each book should get better. So that's good.
Eugenia, was that your first book or have you read? It is?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Is that your only book?
So far.
Okay. Are you working on anything else?
Yes. I'm working on a novel explore some of the same themes, except basically in this one I'm working on now, one of the love interests tries to play Pygmalion with the other one.
Okay. Awesome.
Wait, what's that?
Tries to turn the other person into a mini-me, basically.
Oh.
Do men really do that shit? Like, I'm still floored.
One former boyfriend of mine tried to do it with me.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough to go off of.
I think women do that too. To each other.
If
Many
a woman,
for
if
sure.
a woman tried to change me in any way, she would be very disappointed. Unless,
yeah, but
like,
not everyone is so strong.
Yeah.
I mean more in terms of like what I wear, my hair. Oh, why don't you wear makeup? You know, shit like that. Like, oh, it's not gonna happen.
I think that happens more than you would want to think, Vivian.
Yeah.
It probably does. This was fun, everyone. I enjoyed it.
I do like that we all have different genres.
Oh yeah, it was perfect.
Amazing.
Although in a way, I feel some sort of connection, Jillian, between our stories and in this almost post-apocalyptic sort of world.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I find it fascinating that you guys, you create this shit and it just seems so, it's so creative to me. You know, it's like the ultimate creativity, expression of creativity, creating your own, literally own world, like
the God complex.
Right.
We create
That
worlds.
could be part of
I
it.
don't think that's it.
That's cool though. I always just do, like, I have short stories that I write they're basically in present times, but weird shit happen, like magical kind of shit happens, or like weird technological shit happens. Because I love magical realism, so I do that, but to actually like go into the future, and that's a lot of work, it seems.
It's very fun.
Yeah. It's great escapism as well.
Hey, if you get your rocks off on it, then keep doing it,
Definitely will. Yeah.
History isn't easy either, because like mostly because I'm a perfectionist, so I have to make sure I have everything exactly how it was or probably was.
That seems harder than making it up to me.
I don't know. I don't think I could handle so many rules. Like I have to have that freedom to just come up with anything and make it work. It cannot be crazy enough, and I can just put it in my work. And I would miss that. I would struggle with that if I write any other genre.
Interesting. So you only write in sci-fi
or fantasy, yeah.
See?
Anything where just shit that isn't possible in real life is suddenly possible. There needs to be some element in there. Urban fantasy would also work, like contemporary fantasy. It doesn't really matter, but there has to be something that takes me out of this world and puts me in the next.
Yeah, I agree with that.
My history as a writer was always literary fiction, short fiction, similar in theme to you, Eugene, where I was writing about relationships and queer culture and things like that. And this was my first time writing anything that was not like that, and it was the only book. Like, why did I take on a full book in a genre I never have done before? So gave it a whirl. Why not?
It does worry me that, they won't know how far we've come, even in my adult lifetime, and how far, and the things could possibly roll back. I mean, there's a lot that people, I think a lot of younger people do take for granted that, it has always been this way and always will be this way. Well, no. And I do believe that eternal vigilance is a price of liberty.
Because that is the most important part, I think, in this whole self-development, in whatever sexual preference you have, or maybe even in life, like the moment where you realize this is me. So I can always appreciate a book that sort of that focuses on that moment, because it's just so important.
Okay, so what inspired me to write this? Definitely Joan Crawford.